Thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. A Glimpse of the Kingdom can remain free because of generous donors like you. If you'd like to donate, feel free to do so online, or you can send payments through Facebook Messenger. Don't forget to tell your friends about it so that they can enjoy this ministry as well. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any podcasts.
You can listen to my daddy every single day, like in the gym, in the car, or just at home. Glimpse of the Kingdom is awesome!
Hello, and thank you for listening to A Glimpse of the Kingdom. I am David Pendergrass. I received an email a while back from Scott. Scott asks this question. He says, "Hi, Dr. Pendergrass. I'm writing to you with a question about a change I recently made in my life. I have been going to the same church for a very long time, but recently I switched to a Methodist church in my hometown because my wife and I felt that we needed to be available to do ministry work in our hometown. After some time in prayer, we felt that the Methodist church was the best fit for us. However, I'm now very confused about the choice we made, considering the LGBT controversy surrounding the bishop. Can you help me understand how this came to be? All my life I was told that Jesus taught the proper relationship was between a man and a woman. This has been the church teaching for thousands of years. Now I'm being told that that was all wrong. Well, what else are we wrong about? If we got this all wrong, which seems to be extremely clear teaching by Jesus, then I need to ask, are we winning this? Please help me make sense of this." And he says, "Regards, Scott." Well, Scott, that's a great question, and I respond to this question because it is a good one and it's a common one, and I want to address this on a few levels. One is, to be very clear, I've worked at two Methodist churches. I've studied Methodism in my master's and my PhD, but I am not a constant practicing Methodist. So I'm not pretending to be completely in the know. I've not been to the general conferences they have. I did years ago, but it's been a long time. So I'm kind of, in that sense, out of the loop. Now all I know is what I read and what I ask other Methodist pastors and friends what's going on in their world. As far as what happens particularly in Methodism, Methodists around the world don't agree on this issue, though most of them, as far as I understand, do have the same view. For example, in the Methodist Book of Discipline, it says that God gives the gift of sexuality as a gift. It's a gift of sexuality, but it's within the boundaries of covenanted, monogamous, heterosexual marriage. And therefore, they don't ordain or allow practicing homosexual lesbian relationships. But again, there are some in the last few decades who have been arguing that should be changed, that the Book of Discipline, the major go-to kind of like second Bible of the Methodist, it should be changed. The arguments for changing it aren't novel. They've been around for quite some time, but it seems to me, because of a massive shift in cultural beliefs and values, particularly in America, but also in the West, so the UK as well, a massive cultural shifting change, where of course homosexual orientation was always considered a mental disorder that eventually died off in the psychology circles. Mostly, some still do think it is, but most in the secular field certainly do not. Most do not. And then when it gets taken out of the DSM, the Bible of psychiatry, of psychology, when that gets taken out, it changed a lot. And then, of course, now it comes to the next step is to make it legal with the government. And when that happens, slowly but surely, it changes the cultural mindset. That's very important because what happens when homosexual orientation and in marriage and in behavior, it's a very good test case of what happens as people change their value system based on what they see as authoritative. See, for a long time in cultures in the West, the Bible was the chief authority. And so decisions were chiefly made based on biblical precedent. Now, they were disagreeing on interpretation. My goodness, denominations, in fact, it's very sad, pathetic to me that we have so many different denominations. But people disagree on interpretations. But what most churches historically have always agreed upon is that the Bible itself is the chief authority. But a lot of churches now these days have died off on that. The Bible is not the chief authority. In the Protestant church, now the Roman Catholic Church, the Bible has never been the chief authority. The church tradition has been the chief authority, and the Bible comes second. But in the Protestant church, it's been the chief authority. So what some people have done is thrown that out and say, no, now what the chief authority is what the government says, or what is legal, or what a psychiatrist or psychologist might say. But then there are other people who do believe the Bible is the chief authority. They just don't interpret it the same. And so what I do is I give people the benefit of the doubt, typically amongst Christians, and assume they do respect the Bible. They just come to different interpretive conclusions. In that regard, the major arguments proffered for those who suggest same-sex marriages and ordination is okay, usually, typically, again, I have to say usually and typically because I don't want to just start quoting different authors. And feel free to go read any author you want who tries to argue for same-sex marriage and read and Methodist in particular. If you want to read what Methodists have to say about it, go read Methodists who argue for that, and they'll you hear it from the horse's mouth. But in my reading and experience and conversations, it really genuinely comes down to one simple thing: love. For people who argue that homosexual behavior is okay, they usually say love trumps all. That Jesus' number one message was love, and that beats everything. So every single ethical exhortation in the Bible is relegated. It is tempered because the chief thing has to be love. So anything we do or say toward anybody else, if it is not loving, that is a sin. So if we tell a person you cannot have a erotic relationship with the same sex or the same gender, that is not nice and you're being unloving. And that's typically how that works. A second major argument they're going to make is that, but usually love is the number one, in my experience. The number two most common argument to say the New Testament, the Bible in general, is inapplicable, is that the references about homosexual behavior, they would say, are only in relationships where someone's being exploited or victimized. So when someone's being raped, prostitution, things like that. That's going to be the number one. The second thing they're going to say is that when you look in the Bible prohibitions, they're not really relevant because they're talking about people being abused. The third, probably most common thing when it comes to making an argument for same-sex or same-gender marriage and so forth in the church is that it furthers, I'm thinking how to say it, it furthers the horrible things that gay people go through. So if you say that if you say it is immoral for the same sex or same gender to do something sexual with the other same sex or same gender, you are helping them go hurt themselves or commit suicide. That is a message of hate. I've heard this many times in debates with people. I mean, many times, not my debating, listening to other debates, and sometimes when people talk to me as well, that to say anything besides everything you do and everything you are is perfectly good and okay, it means you are spreading a message of hate. And so it's a way to turn it, to keep a value system of morals, but just, of course, turn it against you and your view. In my experience, those are the top three things that are used over and over and over in this discussion. Now, I have written blogs on my views of homosexuality. I've done podcasts on it. So I'm not going to re-share those now, but feel free to go to my blog, and you can even search in the word same-sex or homosexual, and you'll see what my views are. But very briefly, I think those three reasons are very uncompelling. They're unconvincing on historical levels. I have no personal agenda against gay people. I've been friends with gay people. I know gay couples. I'm super, super nice to them, as nice as I am any straight person. I've never once stoned a person who disagreed with me. I also can break bread with fellow Christians who disagree with me on this issue. I just don't find it compelling at all. And what I find by far the most compelling is what you allude to, which is the teaching of Jesus. That is what Jesus himself says about marriage. Some people read what Jesus says about marriage, particularly in Mark, Matthew, and Luke, but I just go to Matthew 19 because it's the fullest treatment. In Matthew 19, what they usually say is, that's not about gay marriage. It's not about gay marriage. To which I say, you're right. It's about all marriage. And so anything that's not male and female together, to any Jew throughout the history of Judaism and Christianity, besides the last couple decades maybe, anything else would be considered an egregious sexual sin. So instead of going through all those things right now and responding to all of them, like I said, you can just listen to other podcasts or blog if you'd like to, and that might help. The other thing I want to address is your concern at the end of the paragraph that's really, I'm with you, brother, that has really bothered you, that is, well, what else are we wrong about? And if we got this wrong, then what do I do? Well, first I would say, of course, is I'm not sure exactly what your views are, but just for a wider audience, let me say, if you find yourself, because I've heard this several times before, they'll say something like, David, I've been taught all my life that blank is real, all my life blank, and then when we have a Bible study, I realize it was never there, or I'll say, look it up in the Bible and tell me if that you find it, and they'll come back and say, I didn't find it anywhere, and it's a very troubling existential experience to have, to think you've been taught something all your life, and then it's not there, it's not true. Some people deal with that by going, oh, that's a bummer, or, wow, I didn't know I was believing something false. They kind of get over it. But for a lot of people, it is a greater existential crisis. For them, it calls into question all kinds of things. Well, if that's not true, then what about this? And what about this? And what else is not true? I have especially found that to be the case with people who already are on the outskirts of Christianity. Like if their faith is kind of shaky, their trust is already shaky, this stuff it can be really bad for them. So Scott, just in case this is for you, or maybe anyone else in the audience, let me encourage you as clearly as I can, please do not abandon Christianity because some people teach things you never heard before. Please do not do that. Please do not abandon Christianity just because you hear something you never heard before. Instead, what you should do is hear it, listen to it, and then go do research on it. And please do research more than just doing a Wikipedia search or a Google search and finding a blog and go, yep, I've done all the research there is to find. I'm more than happy I do it all the time. I just did it this morning. I sent resources to a person who had questions. I don't know this person. I think he works in China, actually. So my point is, I don't care. That's not about me. The point is, I'm happy to be a resource and to help you. That's my point. And there are other people who'd be happy to be a resource for you as well. There are very good commentaries and very good books. You can read the reviews and read scholarly reviews of all kinds of things out there. And trust me, I understand that it's very difficult if you're new to the field to go, where in the world do I go? And it seems so daunting. I understand that. I really do. And if someone said, David, there are 3 or 4 major views of how to do the best heart surgery, man, I don't even know where to start. I don't know junk about cardiology. So I have to trust people I think are authorities. I don't know junk about a black hole, but I have to trust people who are studying black holes for a living. And I know that's difficult. But my first encouragement is, please don't abandon Christianity. My point number 2 is, please do your own research. Don't make up your mind too quickly. Don't swallow that camel. Just wait. No matter how authoritative that person is, wait to see if it makes, do some research, see if it makes sense. The third thing I'd say is, always, always, always go back to what the text says. It's always safer to go by what you think the text is saying versus to listen to someone else's opinion about what they think God really does want. So, for example, on this issue, one of my chief criterion is, if Jesus explicitly stated that from the beginning it was not so, but God created man and woman to be married, to me, the straightforward reading of that is by far the most compelling. I might hear tons of other arguments that Jesus was crazy or stupid, or he was out of time and he was on the wrong side of history. And I've heard those kinds of things. Okay, I just don't find that compelling. I'd rather be wrong by siding with Jesus and think that I'm siding with Jesus than I am trying to side with the government or side with my culture or side with my denomination or side with my pastor. I'd rather stick with Jesus no matter what. So that really is, really, that's one of my tips. So if you find yourself in a church where they seem to routinely not really care what Jesus said, go ask the pastor, go ask the leader who said it, and sit down with them, have coffee with them, and say, hey, I'd just love to have a conversation. And can you tell me more? Why do you think that? Why is this okay to have the same sex? I know a guy locally who's at a local church. In fact, it was a Methodist church not long ago. And they hired now I don't remember, gay or lesbian, I think it was youth pastor. And they were handing out gay pride pins, like to put on your lapel and stuff. They were handing them out to the congregation, and everyone had to wear it. And they were having like gay pride Sundays and all this stuff. And finally he left. He said, I just couldn't do it anymore because I didn't support all that. And several people felt that way. And this is a while back. But anyway, and I said, did you ever talk to anybody? He said, no, I just left. And I'd been really intrigued to hear if he had gone and talked to the people and said, can you tell me why it is you think that? Just, make an argument. You're just having a conversation. You're not going there with the guns loaded. You really are saying, help me understand. Write it down. Write down their arguments. Write down their reasons. And then go do some research. But that way we're having conversations and we're not, name calling and, oh, you're just liberal this and whatever. We're just really trying to hear a person's view, and we're respecting it as having a view. And but at the same time, of course, we might just disagree with them. We might just say, I don't find that compelling, and I've done my research, and I don't think the Bible teaches that, and I don't think that's the way it should be interpreted. So those are some quick thoughts. I do want to encourage you, Scott, and everybody who's listening. Of course, these are great questions, and keep asking them. What I really appreciate about several things about your question, Scott. One is that you're taking it seriously. You're thinking about theology. You're thinking about what Jesus says. And that's very good. And I want everybody to be like Scott in that regard, to think clearly about these things. Don't just be a lemming. Don't just listen to it just because the preacher or anybody says it, and you just kind of, okay. Go back to the text. Go back to the text. Spend a little energy doing some research. This stuff matters, right? It matters very, very much. Jesus and their other authors in the New Testament took false teaching and false prophecy very, very seriously. Jesus said, if you cause one of these little ones, and little ones means a disciple in Matthew's gospel. If you cause one of these little ones to sin, it's better to get a millstone around your neck, throw yourself in the water. So he took that very seriously, that we don't teach false things. So I really always hope you'll analyze and everything. Those of you who listen to my podcast on a regular basis, do the same thing. Go back to the text if you don't believe me. Go back to the text. You have questions, or David, can you explain more here? I'll do my best to explain it, and maybe we disagree. That's okay, but what we can agree is that the Bible is chiefly authoritative in our lives, and we just maybe come to different conclusions, and that's fine. But anyway, Scott, don't give up, brother. And if the Methodist Church, Baptist Church, Pentecostal Church, non-denom church, whatever church, if they ever teach something that's against what Jesus taught routinely, then, brother, my encouragement is talk to the people, talk to the leaders, hear their arguments, hear their hearts and minds. If you simply cannot agree, you need to find another church. You need to find a church where they actually speak from the Bible, and the Bible is the chief authority, and they don't radically misinterpret it, or rather interpret it in a way that goes against the grain of thousands of years of church interpretation. But again, I wouldn't go there first. I don't like when people just jump ship from a church immediately. They need to talk to the leaders and try to have a conversation with them. That's my opinion. All right, brother, keep up the good work. God bless you, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I really do hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you'll listen more. If you want more, go to davidpendergrass.com. There are tabs at the top that let you have access to all the podcasts I've recorded, to sermons I've done, books I've written. They're all there at davidpendergrass.com. You can also check me out on Facebook, facebook.com/glimpse of the kingdom. facebook.com/glimpse of the kingdom. And also look at my Twitter feed at Glimpse the King, or at Dr. D. Pendergrass, at Dr. D. Pendergrass. There's tons of ways reached out. I hope you will. Send me your questions, send me your comments. If you'd like to support the ministries of Glimpse of the Kingdom, you can also find ways to give online on davidpendergrass.com. If you'd like for me to come and do some consulting, check out my website, davidpendergrassconsulting.com, and I'll be happy to come out and speak to your organization and help and train any way I can. God bless you. See you online.